What happens when a night of music and laughter turns into a storm of hate? On June 6, 2025, the boardwalk of Ocean Beach, San Diego became a war zone. Not between rival gangs or foreign enemies, but among Americans themselves. The air was thick with the scent of salt and beer when a group of Hells Angels bikers surrounded 3 young black men. The laughter vanished. Witnesses recall slurs hurled like weapons, followed by chaos. One man barely escaped, another was beaten into silence. The third was stabbed, his chest collapsing under the blade. He lived, but the wound ripped open more than skin. It tore at America's illusion of unity. Investigators later confirmed what many suspected. This was no random bar fight. Surveillance footage revealed coordination. Radios crackling, lookouts watching. Prosecutors now call it a targeted hate crime, not a spontaneous act. District Attorney Summer Stephan's words carried weight. "We will not tolerate violence or racism." But the echoes of her declaration reach far beyond San Diego's surf. Under President Trump's renewed law and order mandate, hate crimes are treated as acts of domestic extremism, threats to national stability. Federal observers from the Department of Justice have since joined California prosecutors, suggesting this may evolve into one of the largest hate crime trials in state history. BBC News notes the rare convergence of biker gang culture, racial hostility, and organized violence. Reuters calls it a test of California's social fault lines under pressure. Strategically, this case cuts to the heart of America's security debate. If organized groups like the Hells Angels act with ideological motives, how different are they from foreign terror cells? Defense analysts from Janes warn that the symbolism of such violence mirrors extremist recruitment logic, tribal identity, loyalty, and perceived persecution. Al Jazeera draws parallels with the social fractures in Ukraine and Israel, where small incidents ignite national wounds. The implications ripple outward. In a world already watching America's role in global order, every hate crime weakens the moral authority Washington uses to condemn repression abroad. When Chinese state media highlights the Ocean Beach attack, calling it proof of US racial hypocrisy, it's not just propaganda, it's strategic warfare through narrative. And for the survivors? Life now divides into before and after. The sound of waves once meant peace. Now, it recalls screams. Parents avoid the pier at night. Shops install new security cameras. Beneath the postcard beauty of San Diego lies a quiet tension. A question haunting every American city today. If hate can rise from the sand beneath our feet, how safe is the nation built upon it? The deeper investigators dug, the clearer the picture became. This was not a brawl. It was an operation. Hidden behind the roar of Harley engines and leather jackets, the Hells Angels maintained a network more structured than many criminal organizations. In the weeks following the Ocean Beach attack, detectives traced encrypted phone messages, surveillance tapes, and even traffic camera footage linking members across San Diego, Riverside, and Los Angeles counties. Each clue led to another layer: prospects, enforcers, lieutenants. The hierarchy resembled a paramilitary order, built on loyalty and intimidation. According to Reuters, FBI analysts classified several local biker chapters as transnational criminal entities in 2025 due to rising ties with arms traffickers operating out of Eastern Europe. The same encrypted channels used in the San Diego attack had previously surfaced in a federal probe into illegal weapons shipments routed through Mexican cartels. DW reported that investigators believed the group's leadership had become increasingly radicalized, driven not only by profit but ideology. Prosecutors say the Ocean Beach assault was triggered by perceived intrusion, 3 black men walking through what gang members called their territory. The symbolism was unmistakable: race, territory, power. The hate crime enhancement transforms the case from gang violence into a political statement. Defense attorneys, however, claim this is an exaggeration, a street altercation inflated by media hysteria. But the evidence tells another story. Police found knives identical to the one used in the stabbing, gang paraphernalia, and body cam footage showing bikers coordinating escape routes moments after the attack.
Federal interest in the case intensified after The Guardian published a detailed analysis connecting the Hells Angels recruitment surge to online extremist circles, digital echo chambers that glorify violence and racial supremacy. In a post-COVID, politically divided America, these subcultures have merged, criminal brotherhoods adopting ideological banners once confined to the internet. Experts from Jane's Defense Weekly compare this hybridization to patterns seen in Ukraine's irregular militias or Iran's proxy groups, blending criminal, political, and ideological motives into a single, volatile identity. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security quietly expanded its domestic extremism watch list. Sources cited by Al Jazeera indicate that California's biker gangs are now considered potential homegrown extremist auxiliaries, capable of mobilizing rapidly with minimal oversight. Under President Trump's directive, new federal funding has been allocated to reinforce state-level intelligence sharing between local police and federal counterterrorism units. The White House describes it as defending internal sovereignty. Critics, however, argue it blurs the line between security and civil liberty. How far can surveillance go before it begins to erode the freedom it claims to protect? For residents of Ocean Beach, the answer feels immediate. The pier is quieter now. Neon signs flicker over empty sidewalks. Fear has a sound, the revving of engines after midnight. The Hells Angels patch, once a symbol of rebellion, now marks a specter of intimidation. And yet, beneath the tension, one question rises louder than the surf. Has America's obsession with freedom become the very blind spot that allows hatred to organize and strike again? When the arrests came, they came fast and loud. At dawn on September 21st, 2025, San Diego police, backed by the FBI and Department of Homeland Security, launched a coordinated strike across 4 counties. The sound of battering rams and flashbangs shattered the stillness of California's suburbs. Within 2 hours, 17 suspects were in custody. Helicopters circled above as armored vehicles rolled through Ocean Beach, Mission Valley, and Chula Vista. For residents, it felt like a scene from a counter-terrorism operation, not a local police raid. BBC News later reported that the operation was codenamed Red Flag 09, referencing the blood-red insignia of the Hells Angels. Agents had spent 3 months mapping the gang's movements using cell tower triangulation and drone surveillance. Each suspect's location was pinned on a digital command map inside the San Diego Police Tactical Center. Defense News noted that the level of coordination mirrored federal counter-gang tactics used against international drug cartels. When District Attorney Summer Stephan stepped before cameras that evening, her tone was unwavering. This was not a fight. It was a premeditated act of hate. The evidence shows a conspiracy to commit violence against innocent people because of their race. Her words rippled across the nation. President Trump's administration immediately praised the arrests, calling them an example of zero tolerance for domestic terrorism. But the celebration was short-lived. The Guardian highlighted how the case also reignited debates about America's militarization of law enforcement. Images of heavily armed officers storming suburban homes appeared across social media, drawing both support and alarm. Civil rights advocates argued that aggressive tactics risked blurring distinctions between justice and intimidation. Behind the headlines, however, the human cost unfolded quietly. Families of the accused bikers filled local courthouses, shouting, "Set them free." Others gathered in vigil for the victims, lighting candles along the pier where the attack began. 2 worlds, 1 wound. Investigators found evidence that 3 of the arrested bikers had previously trained at private security firms owned by former military contractors. Jane's Defense Weekly suggested that this blending of military skill and gang ideology is a growing concern for U.S. Homeland Security, the emergence of what analysts now call paramilitary subcultures. Such groups, armed with discipline and ideology, pose unique challenges. They operate within U.S. borders, yet mirror the organization of armed factions abroad. From Ukraine's volunteer battalions to Iran's Basij militia, the pattern is familiar.
decentralized violence wrapped in national identity. In America's case, the line between patriotism and extremism is wearing thin. When loyalty to a flag or a patch becomes a license for brutality, who defines justice? As the sun sets over San Diego's coastline, the pier glows under orange streetlights. The same sand once stained with blood now bears flowers and folded notes. Tourists return, but locals still glance over their shoulders. The arrests brought relief, not closure, because every captured man leaves behind another ready to ride, waiting for the next call. And that raises a chilling thought. If hate can organize like an army, can justice keep up like one? The trial of the 17 accused bikers promises to be one of the most closely watched court battles in California's modern history. Set to begin on November 14, 2025, it will not just decide the fate of a few men in leather jackets. It will test whether America's legal system can still draw a line between free association and organized hate. Inside the San Diego Superior Court, security is unprecedented. Metal detectors hum, federal marshals line the hallways, journalists from Reuters and The Guardian fill every seat. Outside, protesters chant on both sides. Justice for the victims, against free the brotherhood. Each defendant has pleaded not guilty. Their attorneys, seasoned criminal defense veterans, argue that the prosecution is inflating a bar fight into a political spectacle. They claim the district attorney's office, under pressure from Washington, is framing the case as a hate crime to serve the Trump administration's law and order narrative. But prosecutors counter with a mountain of evidence, surveillance videos, intercepted communications, and a pattern of gang coordination impossible to ignore. BBC News reports that federal prosecutors are monitoring the trial for precedent-setting implications. If the hate crime enhancements stand, the case could reshape how the Justice Department classifies racially motivated violence tied to criminal networks. This is not just about one stabbing, it's about redefining the scope of domestic terrorism. Legal analysts on DW compared the upcoming proceedings to Germany's own post-war trials of neo-Nazi cells, moments when the judiciary itself was forced to confront ideology. The stakes are similar, convicting not just individuals, but a culture of hate that hides behind freedom of expression. Inside the courtroom, the victims' families sit in silence. The young man who survived the stabbing now walks with a slight limp, his chest scar visible beneath his shirt collar. His mother, speaking to Al Jazeera, said softly, "They tried to erase him. But now, the whole world will see." Her words resonate beyond California, across a nation where racial tension remains a festering wound beneath patriotic slogans. President Trump has called for swift and public justice, a phrase that has reignited debates about judicial independence. Critics from The Guardian caution that political pressure could cloud due process. Yet supporters argue that in times of rising hate crimes, decisive leadership is essential to restore deterrence. As expert witnesses prepare to testify, the case begins to evolve into something larger, a moral trial for America's soul. Defense lawyers plan to challenge the hate crime enhancements, arguing they criminalize thought rather than action. Prosecutors, in turn, will present psychological profiles showing premeditation and collective motive. The courtroom becomes a battleground between ideology and accountability. Every camera in the nation will be watching when the verdict comes. And behind the legal theatrics, one question will linger like a shadow across the marble floor. If justice bends too far to accommodate freedom, does it risk breaking the very peace it's meant to protect? Beyond the courtroom, a wider battle unfolds. One not fought with fists or verdicts, but with ideas. Race, power, and the law are colliding once again on America's stage. This time, the confrontation carries both domestic and global weight. Analysts from Reuters described the Ocean Beach case as a litmus test of America's moral authority. How can a nation preach equality abroad when hate still festers at home? The United States under President Trump has embraced a hardline stance on law enforcement and national security. Federal funding for anti-gang operations has doubled since 2023, while hate crime task forces now operate under the same intelligence sharing protocols as counterterrorism units. Supporters say the policy has reduced violent crime. Critics say it's turning community policing into military surveillance. DW notes that California's fusion centers, hubs linking local and federal intelligence, are now analyzing biker activity using the same software once deployed against ISIS networks. Legal scholars call this the domestication of the war on terror. The goal: eliminate extremism before it metastasizes. But civil liberties advocates warn that such measures risk eroding the very freedoms that define the republic. When every act of hate becomes a national security issue, wrote The Guardian, the state risks criminalizing emotion itself. Globally, the debate mirrors others playing out in fragile democracies. Al Jazeera compares the US dilemma to Ukraine's struggle to root out paramilitary corruption while maintaining freedom of expression, and to Israel's balancing act between internal security and civil rights amid ongoing conflict. Even China, in its state-run media, seizes on America's unrest as proof that Western democracy is fracturing under its own contradictions. Jane's Defense Weekly offers a more strategic interpretation, that the true threat lies in America's internal cohesion. The world's strongest military can project power across oceans, but it cannot bomb away division at home. From a defense perspective, every hate crime weakens deterrence because global adversaries see social fragmentation as strategic vulnerability. Russia exploits it in propaganda. Iran echoes it in broadcast. Beijing studies it in silence. Meanwhile, inside the US, local communities bear the scars. San Diego's black residents describe increased anxiety and mistrust toward law enforcement, even as officers claim to protect them. You can't separate justice from trust, said one civil rights advocate in a BBC interview. If people see hate prosecuted only when cameras are watching, it's not justice, it's performance. And yet, despite the anger, there's resilience. Faith leaders host intercommunity vigils. Schools discuss race and violence openly for the first time in years. The pier where the attack happened has become a place of mourning and of reckoning. Still, the deeper question remains. Can America wage war against hate without becoming the surveillance state it once condemned? The world watches closely, for this trial is more than a legal event. It's a mirror, a reflection of whether liberty and accountability can coexist, or whether one must eventually crush the other. Months after the arrests, Ocean Beach still breathes uneasily. The sea breeze carries laughter again, but beneath it lies a hum of memory, the kind that doesn't fade, only hides. Local artists have painted murals near the pier, faces of unity, hands clasped, waves rising over flames. Yet the words "never again" painted beneath them feel more like a prayer than a promise. Nationally, the case has become a symbol. Reuters reports that state legislatures across the US are drafting new organized hate statutes, expanding penalties for crimes motivated by race, creed, or political ideology. Civil rights organizations applaud the move, saying it modernizes outdated hate crime laws. But The Guardian warns of unintended consequences. Expanding such statutes could allow future administrations to label dissent as extremism. The balance between freedom and protection grows thinner by the day. Under President Trump's renewed domestic security directive, Operation Clear Horizon now monitors extremist activity on encrypted messaging apps used by groups ranging from biker gangs to radical militias. Federal intelligence units have linked nearly 400 individuals nationwide to networks promoting racial violence. To some, this marks progress. To others, it raises a chilling precedent. Surveillance without end. Abroad, America's image flickers. DW notes that allies in NATO view the trial as proof of the US commitment to justice, even amid internal turmoil. Yet adversaries like Russia and China amplify every headline, framing the event as evidence of American hypocrisy. Al Jazeera calls it the struggle of a superpower against its own shadow. The message resonates globally. If hate can shake the United States from within, what moral ground does it hold to lead abroad? In strategic circles, Jane's Defense Weekly draws parallels between domestic cohesion and deterrence readiness. When a society divides, its military focus blurs. Unity, not just weapons, underpins deterrence. That is why this trial matters far beyond California. It is not only about punishing violence, it is about preserving the moral architecture of the world's most powerful democracy. But on the ground, in Ocean Beach, the legacy is quieter. The survivors rebuild. The families of the accused wrestle with shame and denial. Community meetings stretch late into the night. Police, pastors, youth leaders, all searching for common ground. It started as hate, one resident says, but it must end as awareness. As the verdict nears, tension ripples through the city like the tide before a storm. America waits, the world watches. And the question that began on a summer night by the ocean now echoes across borders and generations. Can a nation founded on freedom truly heal if it cannot face the hatred within its own heart? The Ocean Beach hate crime case has grown beyond a single act of violence. It has become a mirror reflecting America's deepest struggles. What began as a brutal assault by members of the Hells Angels evolved into a national reckoning over race, justice, and freedom in 2025. As the Trump administration reinforces its law and order doctrine, the case highlights the fragile line between protecting citizens and overreaching power. Internationally, allies view the prosecution as a sign of moral resolve, while adversaries exploit it to undermine U.S. credibility. Domestically, it exposes the growing militarization of justice and the convergence of ideology and crime. Across the pier where it began, murals now stand where blood once spilled, symbols of both trauma and hope. The question remains unanswered. Will America's pursuit of justice strengthen its unity or reveal fractures too deep to